All right, happy Monday to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Ramisha Shade. I hope you had a great weekend. Of course, you know what time it is. It is time for me to tell you what's happening with the tropics. We'll track it together and hopefully nothing is heading your way. We do have some action out there. In fact, two systems that we are monitoring, one in the process of making landfall and the other still out in the Atlantic. So let's get right to it. First of all, an overview of what we've had so far for this 2024 Atlantic Basin hurricane season. Check this out. Our named storms are starting to add up. Of course, early in the season, we had Tropical Storm Alberto, then Beryl, which roared across the Houston area and at one point was a Cat 5. Of course, it hit Houston as an 80-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane back on July 8th. We briefly had Tropical Storm Chris. Debbie, of course, which impacted Florida and parts of the Carolinas, at one point was a Category 1 hurricane. Ernesto blew up to a Category 2 hurricane. And of course, we had Francine, which was also a Category 2 hurricane for a moment there. And of course, most recently, we had Gordon become a tropical storm. So the next name on the list would be Helene. And we do have a shot of that happening over the next week or so. But right now, nothing that looks like it is going to blow up and become at least a major hurricane anytime soon. So that is good news. But we are monitoring two systems, like I mentioned. You see this swirl very close to Charlotte and Charleston and Wilmington over in the Carolinas. Well, that is being called potential Tropical Cyclone 8. That is usually the name that the Hurricane Center gives these systems that look like they are very close to becoming tropical systems, and there's a likelihood that could happen in the next 24 hours. And that also allows the National Hurricane Center to go ahead and issue watches, warnings, advisories, tropical alerts for a system that isn't quite tropical just yet. But here's the good news about potential Tropical Cyclone 8. It is already in the process of moving inland, so that chance of becoming a tropical storm pretty much gone now because it's already moving inland. Now, if it still was going to sit out over the water, then of course that would have likely happened. But now it's already starting to push on shore, but it's still going to bring a big threat for flooding to the Carolinas. But at this point, it is getting weaker. Those winds down to 35 miles per hour, and it is moving to the north-northwest around 7 miles per hour. As you can see it just to the west-southwest of Wilmington and to the north and east of Charleston, South Carolina, and it is to the southeast of Charlotte, North Carolina. So we're not expecting this to blow up into Tropical Storm or Hurricane Helene because it's already moving over land. So that's good news. However, it's just going to sit here for the next day and a half before it kind of falls apart and dump a lot of additional heavy rain to the Carolinas. So that's going to include Wilmington, Fayetteville, Raleigh, back towards Charlotte, Greenville, Columbia, and down towards Charleston. Notice around tomorrow morning, 1 a.m. Tuesday, winds still around 30 miles per hour. So it's not going to be a huge damaging wind threat, but the main risk from this system, which is still technically non-tropical, will be that very heavy rain. Speaking of heavy rain, here it is. In fact, flash flood warnings going on for several counties across the Carolinas. We are looking at North Carolina, several areas under flash flood warnings, and you could see those rain bands rolling in from the Atlantic. So we've got a ton of heavy rain here right over Greenville, Jacksonville, Wilmington, Fayetteville, and up towards the Raleigh area, even up into Greensboro, North Carolina, and pushing into Charlotte, of course, which is a highly populated area. So all of these spots are going to be under that big time flash flood risk. In fact, this system, even though it doesn't have a lot of strong wind, it continues to dump that heavy rain, but the wind that it does have extends a little over 150 miles from the center. So it is going to be gusty, but I'm not expecting a huge strong wind threat. This is going to be the huge threat. I mean, look at this. We're talking about rainfall just over the last 24 hours, anywhere from 15 to 20 inches of rain. Imagine getting that much rain in less than a day. You know that water is going to pile up, and that is going to cause some pretty extreme flash flooding. So this happened right around Carolina Beach. So this is just south of Wilmington. And this is going to be right around the Carolina Beach area where we have reports, like I said, over a foot of rain 15 to 20 inches in less than 24 hours. That is the rain that has already fallen. That doesn't take into account the rainfall that we're still expecting in that area and surrounding locations over the next few days. So our exclusive Fox Model Futurecast will show you more of those heavy rain bands circulating around Carolina Beach and some of these same spots over the next day or two. In fact, 8 p.m. this evening, the yellows and the reds right around Charlotte, North Carolina, Fayetteville, North Carolina, Raleigh, indicating that risk for more heavy rain that could once again increase that flash flood threat. This system will be in the process of weakening, falling apart over the next 24 to 36 hours, but it is still going to drag in that moisture, and these tropical downpours will continue for parts of the Carolinas. So I think that flood threat will stick around in the Carolinas through at least Wednesday before things start to improve. In fact, our Futurecast rainfall showing between now and Wednesday evening, Wednesday night, the potential for maybe 4 to 8 inches of additional rain, especially over towards Greenville, New Bern in North Carolina, even back towards Fayetteville and parts of Charlotte could pick up 4 inches plus of rain. So we are monitoring that area for flooding. But the good news with potential Tropical Cyclone 8, it doesn't appear that it's going to be able to turn into Tropical Storm Helene because it's already starting to move inland. So, of course, we don't have to worry about that system in the Houston area. That one will stay far away from us. This is the other system that we're tracking. This one's called Gordon. Of course, over the weekend, at one point, Gordon was a tropical storm, but now it is weakened to a tropical depression, and it is just kind of sitting out in the middle of the Atlantic, basically a fish storm at this point. So no threat to land. That is good news. It's fairly disorganized, and it is running into some drier air. So that's really hindering it from blowing up and becoming this big time, powerful hurricane. So that is certainly some good news. Here's the latest with Tropical Depression Gordon, though. Movement is to the west around 5-6 miles per hour, and we've got the maximum sustained winds around 35 miles per hour. And notice it just kind of sits there and meanders and then makes a curve to the north and east over the next few days. But look at the wind speeds, right around 35 miles per hour. So remaining a tropical depression likely through Wednesday afternoon and not really blowing up and becoming a powerful system, and it stays over water. So we're going to watch Gordon closely, but with that drier air in place and with it being basically out over the open water, I don't think it's going to pose much of a threat to anyone. So that is certainly some good news. Also, with that dry air in place, it should stay fairly weak. There's a chance it could briefly re-strengthen back to a minimal tropical storm, but I don't think that it is going to be able to blow up into a big time hurricane because we've got some drier air. You can still see that Saharan dust coming off of that western African coast, and that will kind of hinder some of these systems from getting too strong that try to develop. So we will likely get more tropical waves going and pushing west from that African coast, but with that Saharan dust out there, I think that will kind of slow down development at least. That's a good thing because usually this time of the season, that's when things really start to heat up. Of course, the peak of hurricane season was back on September 10th, so we're starting to move away from that. But notice we are still in that very active period really through the rest of this month and the first 2 weeks of October. I think if we can get past week 2 in October, we're looking pretty good in Houston and the rest of Southeast Texas. Our chance to get hit by a tropical storm or hurricane really starts to go down. Of course, as we go through November, that chance is even lower. In December, we'll be out of hurricane season, hopefully gearing up for the big holiday season. So hopefully we can get through this next few weeks with nothing coming at us, and we're hoping that Beryl will be the only tropical system that we'll have to deal with this season. Of course, that was back in July, and hopefully things will stay quiet here. But of course, we will be here day by day for the remainder of hurricane season, monitoring things for you, and you will be the first to know if something bubbles up out there in the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic or the Caribbean that could head our way. Well, that will do it for your Monday tropical update. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Misha Shade.